We grow up hearing that when there is love, everything else works itself out, that two committed people will find a way to organize their lives together. But when I look more closely at how money actually functions inside relationships today, that narrative starts to feel overly simplified for the reality we're living in. I think about a woman I met recently. She's 33 years old, earns $74,120 a year, and has been in a stable relationship for 5 years. They split a $2,300 rent, share household expenses, and make long-term plans. On paper, the structure looks balanced. Still, she told me that conversations about money are almost always accompanied by a sense of discomfort. Not because there's a lack of care or commitment, but because she's usually the one anticipating risks, organizing scenarios, and thinking through the financial impact of decisions. If you've ever been in a relationship where money felt like a topic that required excessive caution, you're probably familiar with this. Many women end up taking on the more strategic side of financial management, not necessarily by choice, but because someone has to do that work. Over time, that responsibility accumulates. For a long time, money was treated as a male subject, something men handled, decided, and explained. Many women grew up learning to trust that those decisions would be made by someone else, not because they were incapable of understanding money, but because the system was structured that way. But reality has changed. Today, women work, generate income, contribute financially to relationships, and support a large part of adult life structure. Even so, conversations about money still tend to happen too late, usually when a problem has already surfaced. When that happens, money stops being just a practical variable and begins to influence decisions, agreements, and a sense of security within the relationship, not because of heightened emotion, but because of a lack of early clarity. This video isn't about questioning love or turning relationships into cold contracts. It's about understanding why money becomes a point of tension even when there is respect and a shared intention to build something together. And about recognizing that relationships inevitably create financial structures, whether we name them or not. Today, I want to share a perspective that helped me look at money inside relationships more objectively, not to create fear, but to bring clarity, to separate emotion from structure, and to think about these dynamics earlier rather than later. We often hear that if two people are responsible, communicate well, and care about each other, money tends to work itself out. That as long as no one is reckless or overspending, financial stress inside a relationship should be manageable. This belief makes sense. For a long time, it aligned closely enough with reality. If we go back a few decades, the structure was very different. In the 1970s, the median household income in the United States was around $90,800 a year, while the median home price was roughly $23,000. That meant a home cost just over 2 years of income. Healthcare costs were lower, higher education was far more affordable, and a single income could realistically support a household in many regions. In that context, relationships had more built-in financial margin. Today, the numbers tell a different story. Median household income is closer to $74,000, while the median home price has surpassed $420,000. Rent has followed a similar path. In many cities, a modest one-bedroom apartment costs between $1,800 and $20,500 a month. Healthcare, education, childcare, and insurance have all grown faster than wages. The financial system surrounding relationships has become tighter, more complex, and less forgiving. This matters because many of the expectations we bring into relationships were formed under older conditions. We still assume that good intentions, shared values, and basic responsibility are enough. But the math has changed. When fixed costs consume a larger share of income, there is less flexibility and more pressure on every decision. If we start with a fairly typical scenario, this becomes clearer. Imagine someone earning $74,820 a year, after federal taxes, state taxes, and payroll deductions. Take-home pay might be around $4,300 per month, depending on location. A $2,300 rent immediately takes more than half of that. Utilities, internet, transportation, insurance, groceries, and basic subscriptions can easily add another $200 to $1,400. Before savings, before emergencies, most of the income is already allocated. This is where many women's experiences begin to diverge. Even when income is shared, women often carry more of the mental responsibility around these numbers. They track due dates, anticipate future expenses, think about margin, and worry about what happens if something changes. This work is rarely visible, but it shapes how money feels inside the relationship. It's understandable that this creates tension. not because someone is doing something wrong, but because the structure leaves very little room. And when room disappears, small differences in priorities or risk tolerance start to matter much more. If this feels familiar, it isn't a personal failure. This wasn't part of the financial story most of us were taught. The system changed, but the narrative didn't fully update. And that gap is where a lot of stress lives. If this perspective resonates so far, you can type clarity in the comments. To understand this more clearly, it helps to slow down and look at the numbers in more detail. Not to judge them, but to see how they actually function over time. Let's continue with that same income of $74,820 a year. After taxes, that may translate to roughly $51,600 annually, or about $4,300 per month. Subtracting a $12,300 rent leaves $2,000. Utilities and internet might total $250. Transportation, whether a car payment, insurance, fuel, or public transit, could easily reach $450. Groceries might be around $500. Healthcare premiums and out-of-pocket costs can add another $300. At that point, about $500 remains, before savings, emergencies, travel, gifts, or long-term planning. What often gets missed in money conversations is how thin this margin actually is. On paper, the income looks comfortable. In practice, flexibility is limited. This is where hidden costs appear, not just financial ones, but mental ones as well. There's the cost of constant planning, the cost of delaying decisions, the cost of avoiding risks that might otherwise be reasonable. Over time, this ongoing calculation becomes part of daily life. And in many relationships, women carry most of this invisible labor. Another hidden cost appears when careers are interrupted. A pause of 3 to 5 years can significantly reduce lifetime earnings. Research by economists such as Claudia Golden shows that career interruptions meaningfully contribute to long-term income gaps for women. When this happens within shared financial structures, the impact compounds quietly. There's also longevity to consider. On average, women live longer than men. That means retirement savings need to last longer as well. A system that already feels tight during working years becomes even more sensitive when stretched over a longer lifespan. The pattern that emerges isn't about bad choices. It's about good intentions operating inside a system with very little margin. When income growth fails to keep pace with fixed costs, stability becomes more about structure than effort. One alternative way to think about money inside relationships is not as a shared pool that automatically balances itself, but as a set of interconnected responsibilities that benefit from clarity. This doesn't imply rigidity or mistrust. It simply acknowledges that shared finances don't eliminate individual risk. There is no single correct approach. Every relationship has its own context, limitations, and priorities. But understanding the math helps separate what is structural from what feels personal. That clarity can change how decisions are framed. None of this is simple. There's no universal path. But seeing the numbers clearly can shift how financial decisions are made and ease the pressure of assuming that stress means something is wrong. If the numbers surprised you, you can write awareness in the comments. And if this perspective changed how you see money inside relationships, comment perspective. So what does all of this point to? Not that relationships are broken or that money itself is the problem, but that many of the financial patterns we live with were never clearly named or examined. What often shows up as tension or discomfort is usually a mismatch between old expectations and a very different economic reality. When those patterns go unspoken, they don't disappear. They simply operate quietly in the background. At the same time, there isn't one correct answer here. I don't know what the right structure is for your relationship, your income, or your stage of life. Your priorities, responsibilities, and constraints are uniquely yours. What works for one person may not make sense for another. And that matters because financial decisions don't exist in isolation. They exist inside real lives. One gentle way to sit with this is to notice how money conversations actually feel day to day. Not how you think they should feel, but how they show up in practice. Are they avoided? Do they only happen when something goes wrong? Do they feel rushed, heavy, or difficult to start? Simply noticing this can be revealing. Another quiet place to look is how much financial thinking happens silently. Who tends to run the numbers mentally? Who anticipates future costs? Who worries about timing, margin, or risk? Not to assign blame, but to see the pattern more clearly. Often stress doesn't come from disagreement, but from uneven awareness. It's also worth remembering that where you are now isn't a verdict on your past choices. If you're just beginning to think about this, that's okay. If you've already made decisions you would approach differently today, that's okay too. There's no correct timeline for understanding money. This space exists because many of us are figuring this out while living it. We weren't given clear frameworks for talking about money inside relationships, especially as women. We weren't taught how to separate emotion from structure or how to have practical conversations without turning them into something heavier than necessary. Curiosity here doesn't mean something is wrong. It means you're paying attention. If nothing else, I hope this offered a different lens, not answers or instructions, but perspective. Something to sit with. Something that may come back to you the next time a financial decision or conversation feels harder than expected. What you do with that awareness is entirely up to you. And if at any point you thought, this happens in my life, you're not alone. Many women are noticing the same patterns, often quietly, often without language for them. Here, we can talk about these things without judgment or pressure, and without pretending there's a single right way to handle money. If this helped you think differently, leave a like. If you want more conversations like this, subscribe to the channel. And if you know someone who might recognize herself in this perspective, feel free to share it with her. We'll keep exploring this together, one layer at a time.